Hello and welcome to the first in a series of videos where we are learning about the array data structure, the one-dimensional array, the two-dimensional array, and in this video in particular we're looking to understand how we declare and initialize an empty array so that we can use that later on in our program. And you'll remember from our time in the classroom that one of the characteristics of an array is that it is a fixed data structure where we need to specify up front in our program how large we want our array to be. So if it's of array size 5, in other words big enough for 5 values, if we have a 6th value that we want to store in that array, we can't, because we can't extend the array. And if it also turns out that we only need 2 values to store in our array, we can't delete any of these spaces in our array either. So the traditional array is actually quite rigid because it's fixed and it's static, and once we've declared it and initialized it, there really isn't much we can do to be flexible with this particular data structure. So importantly, the question then is, how do we initialize a fixed size array? Well, there are 2 ways that we can do this, and the easiest way is simply to choose an arbitrary value to populate our array, and then of course later on in our program we can simply change the values to something a little bit more meaningful. So let me show you what that means. Let's choose an array variable name of my array, something sensible. You know that the format or the syntax for an array is square bracket at the beginning, square brackets at the end. Okay, so my array equals, okay, and then we will say let's choose 0 as our initial placeholder value. So 0, 0, so we've got 3, 4 and 5. Okay, and then in actual fact that will do us nicely. I'll put a little comment up here which says initialize with a placeholder value of 0. Okay, and then of course to use my array all I need to do is to change a value at a particular index whenever I need to. So if during the course of my program I need to change index value 1, that's easy. I just do my array at index value 1 and then I can change it to whatever I like. Okay, and let's print that out just to show you that that does in fact work. So I'm going to print the entire array. So what you will see on the screen when I've printed it is the array represented in its data structure form with the square brackets on either end. So let's do my array. Okay, and let's print that out on screen, see what it looks like. Oops, there we go. Okay, so you can see here index value 0, there's index value 1 which I've just updated, and then we've got of course our placeholder values. Can you see a problem with choosing an arbitrary value to initialize and populate our array? Well, the problem that we've got is that when we get to the end of our program and we have zeros in our array, we won't know whether the 0 that we've got is essentially representing an empty value or an arbitrary value, or whether the 0 that we've got in our array is actually a meaningful value which has been put in there by the program. So choosing real values as placeholders when we come to declare and initialize an array is not particularly helpful, and we need something a little bit more sophisticated. So most programming languages include what's called the null or the none value, and it's basically empty space which the program recognizes of being of some usefulness when we come to initialize some space in memory. In Python it's the keyword none. So what I would do then is I would replace my actual meaningful values with something which Python recognizes doesn't have any value, but is just used to specify space, if you like. So none, okay, none. And you can see, I mean, putting aside my bad typing, you can see that even typing in for 5 values of none, it's actually quite time consuming. So if I had an array of size 50, I would be here for quite some time typing in 50 nuns. Okay, that will do us nicely though. We'll talk about the shortcut in a second. If I just run this again to show you that none doesn't generate an error. Okay, so there we have none, and in fact because none doesn't actually have any value, we wouldn't use none for mathematics. We know that if we get to the end of a program and we've got none, in our array, it basically means that at that index value, nothing useful has ever been stored. Okay, so this question of finding a shortcut then for declaring or using none, right, for something which might be a much larger array, we have a technique in Python where we can simply specify none once, and then we do multiply by the size that we want the array to be. Okay, so none multiplied by 5 is saying to Python, give me an array, okay, with none specified 5 times. And of course we could do 5,000 if we wanted to. All right, and it's very, very easy and quick to be able to do that. So let's stick with 5. All right, let's print that again to make sure that that works just as well. Okay, and there you can see that that particular shortcut and syntax works very nicely. Okay, so none in square brackets multiplied by our size of array is a very, very useful technique for initializing an array in Python. Now, of course, if I wanted to specify a value at each position in the array, I can simply repeat this one line of code and change the index values. Okay, so if I just get rid of print array, because we don't need that anymore, we've already got a value specified or stored at position 1, index value 1 at our array. So let me just copy that because the syntax is going to be the same, bar a small tweak rather. So my array at position 0, let's make that 23. So 12, 13, 23. Let's do at position 3, we want to have, let's say, 8, 9, 7. Then at position 4, okay, let's do 78. So that should be 2, shouldn't it, at position 2. That needs to be to position 3, and then of course we've got position 4, which is the last one that's left. So at position 4 or index 4, let's do 1000. Out of interest, before I do that, is this going to be acceptable? Okay, from what we know about arrays, can I pop in a string in the middle of my integers? The answer is no, because arrays must be of the same data type. So you can't mix data types in an array. So we have to stick with the integer data type, which is what we're doing here, or what we're using here. So let's pop that back again. Okay. So in order to print these, I could of course do a print statement for each one of these values. Okay, so 5 individual lines with a print statement. But of course what we can do is we can use a loop to iterate through our array and print out each value at each particular index in the array. How do we do that? Well, you would have heard in class, of course, that very often we refer to an array as a sequential structure. In other words, the index values are counting from 0 up to the maximum. And of course, our for loop is also a counting loop. So we can use this general principle of sequencing or sequential stuff to use a for loop or a counting loop to loop through sequentially all of the values in our array. So how does that work? Well, let's take the standard syntax for a for loop in Python is for, and then we want a variable for count in range. And then of course our in range specifies the start, stop and steps that we want to specify for our loop. So our start is 0. Okay. Now what's our stop value? You remember with a Python for loop, okay, the start is at a particular value and then we go up to, but not including the value that we specify for a stop. So up to, but not including is going to be 5 in this particular case, which basically means Python will include and then stop after the value of 4, after it gets to index 4. And of course we want to step in 1 because we're not going to do anything special with the steps. So now what we want to do is to print, instead of the whole array, we're going to print my array at a particular index value, and of course that index is stored in the variable count. Okay, so let's see if that works for us. And there we go, you can see that we have printed off the 5, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values that are stored in our array. We start at 0, okay, and we loop up to, but not including 5. So in our for loop, okay, it will include 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then stop after 4, which is exactly what we want, because we need to stop after 4 here, because our maximum index value is, of course, 4. Okay, I hope that was useful for you. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how we can make use of the one-dimensional array and how to get over some of the challenges we are faced with being a static data structure. So I will see you in the next video.